A Body to Die For, a Stan Kraychik mystery, Book 1. Author Grant Michaels, publisher Stonewall Inn Press, narrator Eric Ost. Chapter 19, The End of the Rope. I snapped myself into sobriety for the short drive back to the shop. I didn't want to get hauled in for drunk driving, especially after my last sweet words with Branco. Nicole pounced on me as soon as I walked in. "It's after 4. Where the bloody hell have you been?" "Practicing my Veronicas, Lieutenant Branco." "I smell liquor and smoke." It was business, honest. Had I said business? "You've been out drinking while everyone around here has been working." She shook her head impatiently. "At least Ramon was here to help. He covered most of your afternoon appointments except the ones who walked out because only you understand how to do their hair. Blessed are they who can feel my fingerprints on their scalp." Nicole didn't even smile. "You're really scrambled their brains if they believe that. Some people still have a sense of allegiance." "Heed your own words, Stanley." "Nikki, don't be sore. I'm finally onto something. I know why Roger Fairburn came to Boston." I paused dramatically, but it had no effect on Nicole. "Stanley, I don't have time for this." She tried to walk away, but I stopped her. "Nikki, listen. This is it. Roger Fairburn was in Boston specifically to see someone at the Choate Group. His meeting Calvin was not the lucky coincidence Calvin made it out to be." "Stanley," she said with sparks of annoyance in her bright eyes, "you have customers waiting. We'll discuss this later." Customers? Here I was on the verge of solving a murder and about to commit a crime myself just to do it, and Nicole was worried about customers? I knew she wouldn't hear me out now, so I resigned myself to the mundane matter of work. Just to goad her a bit, though, I responded like a flunky. "Yes, ma'am." I found Ramon working at my station, so I had to use the vacant one at the back of the shop. It's furthest from the windows facing Newberry Street, and it's poorly lit and drab back there. I felt like a schoolboy who'd been sent to stand in the corner for being naughty. Through it all, I managed to work on 2 customers, but my performance was far below its usual excellence. I was so preoccupied with the adventure awaiting me that night that I misjudged my chemicals, not to mention the specific London Dry chemical that was still running through my veins. As a result, the color job was a tad brassy, and the perm came out too soft. I promised both customers that I'd adjust the work within a week at no charge. After the shop closed, I joined Nicole in the back room. I couldn't handle any more alcohol, but I was still ready for another session at the Albright Smoking Academy. "Tonight," Nicole pushed a light blue box of English cigarettes toward me. "Have you changed brands?" I asked. "No, Stanley. These are for you. Your very own pack. Consider it a rite of passage." "Why? I smoke so few." "Yes, darling, but you waste so many of mine. It's painful." She drew a rose-colored cigarette from her gold case and lit it. I watched her and envied the pleasure she got from the moment. Smoking was no pedestrian habit with Nicole. In fact, another of her smoker's axioms: never smoke while standing or walking indoors or out. "Now, Stanley," she said, "you may pour us both a drink and then explain briefly what caused you to be so late this afternoon." I had the disquieting sensation that I was in the witness box. I poured the drinks, then sat at the table. Nicole eyed the clear mineral water bubbling in my plastic cup and said, "No gin tonight?" I shook my head. "Well, Stanley, I see you have some sense left in you." "Not for long, I thought." She took a sip of cognac and said, "Now, tell Mother what's been happening." I began to speak, then realized I was too tired to explain anything. I simply didn't have the energy or the desire to talk about the case anymore. I just shook my head. "Never mind, it's not worth the bother." Nicole said, "Stanley, please tell me. Something is obviously on your mind. You know it's better to talk about these things than to hold them in." I knew she was right, but I was tired. The sudden languor was probably an after effect of the afternoon cocktail session with Jack, along with the emotional outburst with Branco. I sipped some bubbly water, shrugged, and began. It started with some letters Yudi brought with him. So he's shown up finally? That's a relief. No, he hasn't, Nikki. I went through his luggage and found the letters there. I reddened with shame, but Nicole continued smoking with pleasure and listened for more. What I'd considered a heinous crime didn't seem to faze her at all. The letters were Roger's, and I read them. They named the Choke Group, and Vivian Brickley is the parties who'd hired a group of surveyors out in Yosemite. Stanley, what does this have to do with anything? That means the answer is at the Choke Group. But you've already been there countless times. Yes, but now I know what to look for. Now I have a plan. I lowered my eyes, unsure of how to tell her about the scheme to break into the Choke Group offices. Except, you may not approve. You haven't asked my approval for much else recently. Why start now? You can do whatever you like. Perhaps you should even consider changing careers. Become a professional investigator. Nikki, how could I leave the shop? You've succeeded very well this past week. I suddenly realized she was serious. She went on. You seem to have forgotten, Stanley, that Snips is a full-time business. Perhaps it's time for you to consider a sabbatical. Oh, Nicole, I wailed. Not you too. It's hard enough with Branco bucking me, but I can't go with it tonight if you're against me. Nicole sighed and tapped her nails on the table. Stanley, I can't. Oh, never mind. Just tell me what you're planning to do. I'm afraid it's drastic. I struggled to light one of the new cigarettes she had given to me. To my surprise, it was easier to smoke than her own brand. Tonight, I said, surrounding myself with a cloud of uninhaled smoke, I'm going to break into the offices of the Choke Group. Nicole said nothing, but listened intently, as though I hadn't delivered the punchline yet. I continued, I know the answer is somewhere in that place, but Branco won't help me get into their files. She still didn't respond. Nikki, did you understand me? She inhaled deeply, then released the smoke from her nostrils in a slow, curling cloud. I understood perfectly, Stanley, and I realize that you're upset and exhausted, but I also know you can't be serious. I am serious. Then you've lost your mind. That's probably true. She sipped more cognac. Stanley, you've been somewhat foolish up to now. Passionate, but foolish. But Stanley, really, this is criminal. It's the only way, Nikki. Once I've got the evidence I know Branco will cooperate. If I can prove there's something at the Choke Group, show it to him. I know he'll go after them. No, Stanley. There's no choice. There is a choice. You can get back to your own work and leave the crime business to the police. Nicole, 2 people have been killed, and 2 others have vanished. The police have done nothing. They said they suspect me, but they didn't book me. They held Calvin on a pathetic drug charge and released him on bail. He's dead, and now they're after Aaron Harvey and Yudi. Can't you see what's happening? They're just spinning wheels and exercising their rule books, while the case fades into oblivion without an answer. All because the original victim, Roger Fairbrook, was gay. If I don't do something about it right now, a killer could get away. Nicole sat back in her chair. She stared at me for a long time, as though trying to determine my sanity. Then she said, Stanley, for all the time we've been friends, you've known that I love you. Sometimes I think I even understand you. But I think something has changed in you. Something I honestly don't understand. And frankly, I'm afraid it's going to pull us apart. Nikki, nothing has changed in me. It's just that I finally have a chance to do something I've never done before, never even imagined doing. I can make a difference if I take action, but I'm still the same person inside. Nicole closed her eyes. Minutes passed so quietly that I could hear the bubbles fizzing happily in my mineral water. When she opened her eyes, they were bright and clear. All right, Stanley, she said, suppose you go through with this ridiculous secret agent stunt. How will you do it? I have it all planned. I was winning her back. I'm sure you do. Hello? No, I have a partner. You mean an accomplice. Who is it? Someone I met out in Yosemite, a climber who was very close to Roger. Can you trust him? At this point, I have no choice. Stanley, you keep saying that. You do have a choice. No, I don't, Nikki. This is it. This is my rite of passage. Nicole frowned and shook her head. Or your Waterloo. At least give me your blessing. You are a foolish, stubborn, ego-ridden man. That's it? All right. Go be an idiot with my blessing. When is this media event happening? Midnight, I said, and thought, what relief. If Nikki could be sarcastic, then she still loved me. She said, as soon as you're in that place, you call me at home. If I don't hear from you by 12:30, I'm sending the police. Nikki, I'm not sure I'll be able to call you. This is a break-in, not an art opening. You call me. Okay. And look at the bright side. If anything happens to me, the Abusan carpet is yours. Thank you, she said, extinguishing her cigarette with the usual neurosurgeon precision. But it clashes with my colors. We embraced for a long moment. Nicole murmured, be careful. It was around 8:30 when I headed down to prepare for the big night ahead. As I climbed the short masonry staircase heading up to the front desk of my building, I sensed something wasn't right. Then I realized that the lump under the stoop wasn't lit as usual. I got my keys out, and it happened. Someone jumped me from behind and locked my arms. Someone else was in front, pounding strong fists into my gut. I tightened my muscles, but it wasn't enough. I smelled the stench of beer and smoke around me. I kicked violently, but I connected only once to whoever was there. From behind, my arms were yanked back more. Pain sliced through my shoulder as muscle fibers were torn. Through overwhelming dizziness and nausea, I heard someone mutter, enough. I didn't quite black out, but I wish I had. The last thing I remember was the scent of citrus before I vomited on my Italian leather jacket. In a distorted, dreamlike state, I crawled up to the 4 flights of stairs to my apartment. I felt like a pilgrim at Lourdes. If I made it to the top, I'd be healed. I dragged myself on all 4s into my apartment. Sugar Baby was at the door, wrapped herself around my elbows. I closed the door and slumped on the floor. She sniffed at my face, then licked my cheek tenderly. My nurse and lover, a Burmese cat. After an hour or so, I got up. I stumbled into the kitchen and poured myself a drink. Then I filled the bathtub with hot water and soaked in therapeutic bath salts to reduce the swelling and ease the pain that coursed throughout my body. After drying off, I was about to pour another drink, but instead took a couple of painkillers with plain water. I was going to have to be alert in a couple of hours, and my adrenaline would need every break it could get. I zapped some leftover pizza in the microwave oven, but after a few bites, the nausea returned. I gave up with it and went to the bedroom to change. As I put on dark clothing, I reminisced about the night Yudi and I had gone to the slide side at Yosemite. It seemed long ago. That night I was simply anxious. Tonight I was terrified. I glanced at Yudi's luggage. I meditated quietly for his safety, for now I was sure he was in trouble. To relax, I played with Sugar Baby. I figured a round of mousy might reduce my growing panic to a manageable nervous tingle. At one point, I realized that this could be the last time I'd ever play with my favorite cat. In my heart, I knew Branco was right. I was dealing with a killer. At 11 o'clock, I left my apartment and drove to Cambridge. I was grateful the convertible had power steering because my shoulders hurt a lot. I wondered how I was going to be able to work the next day, assuming nothing dire happened this night. I picked up Wacky Jackie in Harvard Square at 11:30 as planned. When he got in the car, he slapped my shoulder and said hoarsely, "Hey, fella, surprised you showed up. Thought you might have changed your mind." He'd been drinking. probably hadn't stopped since our afternoon together at Denial. He whooped loudly, "Gonna have us one hootin' hell of a time tonight." Meanwhile, my shoulder burned from the manly slap he had just given me. We got to the choke group offices and found the outside wooden gate closed and locked. Consequently, the overture to the main event was to scale an 8-foot fence. Wacky Jackie crouched, then jumped up and grabbed onto the top. He scooted up the fence like a huge bug. That technique certainly wasn't going to work for me, not with my shoulders moaning in pain under my jacket. Instead, I stepped way back for a good running start. Then I imagined Daniel O'Connor dancing up the walls and singing in the rain. If he could defy gravity, so could I. I dashed toward the fence and used my strong legs to propel me up in a wide arc onto the planks at the apex of my mad scramble along vertical fence. I grabbed for the top. The upward thrust of my whole body lessened the strain on my arms and shoulders, but they still hurt like hell. It was only the beginning. On the other side of the fence was the choke group lawn, which thankfully was dense and soft even in early November. I jumped down from the fence and landed on my legs in the plush grass. I got up and stood next to Wacky Jackie. The air jittered with tension. It must have been the two of us, so excited by the main event, breaking and entering. "This climb will be a piece of cake," he said confidently. Cake, I thought, made with bran flakes and soy oil? The only light was from the moon and the street lights on the other side of the fence, but still I could see the 3-story building looming high against the dark sky. "Maybe it's too dark," I said. "Nah, full moon's easy to climb on. Not working by the rules tonight anyway." "I'd say not, considering what we're up to." "Meant good climbing rules." He unfastened a hank of nylon rope from his belt and attached a large 3-pronged metal hook to one end. Then he stepped back from the building and flung the rope high up into the air. The large hook caught on a pipe protruding from the roof. I was impressed that he succeeded on the first try. Wacky Jackie said, "Just want to get up there, get in, and get out, right?" I nodded. "Right. So ain't no time for ethics and honest technique. That's why I brung these." He thrust some metal contraptions at me. "Over your shoes, clamp onto the rope, just like climbing a ladder." He quickly put the clamps over his shoes and climbed on the rope. He was up on the rooftop in less than a minute. Oh, that it had been that easy for me. Once I finally got the clamps on, I couldn't get them to work right. On one foot, the clamp wouldn't release the rope to let me slide the foot up, while the other clamp was supposed to be holding tight. Eventually, I got them to release at the right time, but then they wouldn't grip the rope right tightly enough, so when I raised one foot, the other one would slip downward. It was that sensation of moving your legs frantically and getting nowhere, like treading water on a nightmare. "Easy there," Jack hissed down at me through the darkness. "Wear yourself out." I ended up hauling myself mostly with my arms. I was soaked in sweat when I got past the first floor windows, more from the agonizing pain in my shoulders than sheer exertion. Then, mercifully, the clamps decided to cooperate for the rest of the climb. At the top of the rope, Wacky Jackie pulled me up onto the roof. "Argh!" I groaned in pain. The roof was steeply raked. Wacky Jackie said, "Now, it's just like them rocks we climbed. Keep your hands and feet flat and follow me." Our goal was one of the skylights. Wacky Jackie studied them carefully before choosing the one we would crawl toward. When we got there, he began dismantling the metal molding around the skylight. It all seemed so easy that I wondered how many times he'd done this kind of work. Probably I didn't want to know. All I wanted was to see the files in that building and find out what Roger had been trying to do before he was killed. I helped Wacky Jackie lift the skylight panel and place it behind the framework that jutted up above the roofing. We didn't want the glass panel sliding off while we were inside, I looked down through the opening in the roof into the building. It was a big, dark hole. I thought it strange that the place had no night lights. How are we going to get down? I asked. Already I was anticipating more pain in my shoulders. Watch. Wacky Jackie produced a rope with numerous loops of nylon webbing attached. Y'all like this. It's French. What is it? Rope ladder. Called a foray. Pretty neat, huh? He secured one end of the extraordinaire to the skylight frame and dropped the other end into the black hole below. You first. I shook my head. It's better if I watch and copy you, like Simon says. Nah, this ain't like climbing. I gotta hold it for you. Sometimes they slip and you don't want to be on it when it does. That's all I needed to hear. I hauled myself through the skylight and gripped the loops of the extraordinaire tensely in my hands. Jack grumbled. "Ya feet, stupid. Put your feet in, not your hands." "Hey, pal, I'm using whatever works here." I lowered myself, but the pain searing my shoulders was too much. I just slid down until it reached the end of the rope. Now, besides a battered body, I had rope burns on my hands. I had no idea how far down the floor was. That is scary. Jumping into total blackness. Before I let go, I reminded myself to breathe deeply and cushion the fall with a dancer's ply. 1, 2, 3. Release. My legs caught the impact, and I rolled softly on the carpeted floor to absorb the rest of the force. Even at that, my aching body wailed, but I didn't care. I was in. Wacky Jackie descended the extraordinaire quickly and landed softly near me. He spoke loudly into the darkness. "We're here." "Shh! Why are you talking so loud?" I whispered. "No one here to hear us, is there?" he asked without lowering his voice. "I guess not. So now what?" I knew the one and only place I'd find the stuff I wanted. "Give me the flashlight, Jack. I know the way." The door to Roy Brickley's office was locked, but Jack turned out to be adept at lockpicking as well. He got it open easily, a little too easily. Inside Brickley's dark office, the air held the scent of bergamot from his expensive cologne. I went to his desk and pulled at one of the drawers. It opened, much to my surprise. In fact, all the drawers were unlocked. I quickly rummaged through the contacts. Jack said, "Find what you need?" "I don't know." I opened a folder that contained what looked like a formal statement by Roy Brickley. It told of Jennifer Doughton's mental instability and her recent confession to Roy Brickley that people like Calvin Redding didn't deserve to live. The document had been notarized by Roy Brickley's attorney, J.T. Rorum. It took only a moment's scan of my mental trash can to recall that Calvin's attorney had been the same person. Curious, I thought. "What you find?" Jack asked. "I'm not sure." I also thought it peculiar that such a document hadn't been more carefully guarded and locked up, or that it had even been written in the first place. I shined the flashlight around the office and stopped the beam on a huge rosewood breakfast. That's probably where he keeps the important stuff, I thought when I found every door and drawer on that massive cabinet locked. I knew I'd hit pay dirt. With the flashlight, I got a close look at all the holding latches. If I had the right tool, I could probably jimmy them open. What I needed was a flat, narrow, flexible piece of metal. A piece of metal much like the triple-cut nail file I always carry in my back pocket, even tonight. I worked the file into the space between one drawer and the cabinet frame. A few minutes of expert juggling and I was in. "That's it?" asked Wacky Jackie nervously. "I don't know. God, this guy was insistent. Maybe he was more nervous than I thought." The drawer turned out to be empty, so I tried the other two. The first of those contained flat blueprints. I shined the light onto the top of the pile. The drawing looked like the aerial view of a sprawling resort. The title patch in one lower corner of the blueprints gave me a chill. Yosemite Valley Luxury Condominiums. The remaining blueprints all had the same title, but were for different modules. Wacky Jackie said, "Find it?" "Found something," I answered with a hint of Wacky Jackie's own inflection. I was going to have a good time telling Branco about those blueprints. In the third drawer of the break front, I found piles of correspondence between Roy Brickley and a Leonard Smuckbaum, whose address was a post office box in Yosemite Village. With a name like that, I thought it was no wonder he went by Mr. Leonard. I just started reading the first letter when the office lights suddenly came on and I squinted through the glare and made out the unmistakable faces of Roy Brickley and Mr. Leonard. Wacky Jackie grinned broadly and said to Buckley, "Got him here, just like I promised, didn't I?" Brickley said, "Yes, you've done well. Now be quiet." He stared at me with contempt. "I shouldn't be surprised to find you here, Mr. Kraychik, yet I am impressed with your endurance. I recover pretty fast for a punching bag, Mr. Brickley." "I regretted having to do that, but I didn't know how else to stop you." "I can't understand that after all, when the phone call and the letter and the car business didn't work, and breaking into my apartment didn't get you anywhere. You had no choice but to resort to good old-fashioned bullying." Roy Brickley's face twitched. "Mr. Kraychik, I have never met such a stubborn, persistent person as you. You have caused me great distress, but I'm sure that's all behind us." He leered contentedly. "We can talk openly now, face to face." Wacky Jackie said, "What about my money? You owe me money." It started toward Brickley, but Brickley now had a small dark metal object in his hand. Yes, he had a gun. Wacky Jackie stepped back. Brickley looked at me and said, "You see the effect you have? People become unreasonable. And the past short week, with all your meanderings over the death of a national park ranger, you caused more trouble to my partner Leonard here and myself than any obstacle we'd encountered in the past 2 years. You were, believe me, the last person I thought I had to contend with. I always do my best." "Who killed Roger?" I asked. "Is that all you can think of at a time like this?" "You killed him." "Nonsense," snapped Brickley. "Calvin Redding did it." "Isn't that what you're adamantly believed all along?" he sneered. "Then it must be true, correct? Those young bucks were playing some obscene game, and they had an accident. Simple." "No, Mr. Brickley. Calvin didn't kill Roger. You knew that. You even hired your own Brahmian lawyer to represent him and get the charges dropped. I wonder how much that cost you." "That may have been a mistake. Not as big a mistake as killing Calvin." "Nonsense. Aaron Harvey did that. Jealousy." Brickley shook his head and clicked his tongue twice as if to say, "Naughty, naughty." "You're lying. That's your opinion, Mr. Kraychik, but rather than engage in this idle, morbid speculation, I'd like to get down to business." I glared at him. "I have no business with you." The gun that was pointing my way, however, changed that notion. Mr. Leonard said, "If I were you, I'd listen to what he has to say." Brickley said, "Thank you, Leonard." He softened his manner somewhat and continued speaking to me. "I am about to propose an offer that will change your life, and the investment on your part is quite small." "I have no money," Brickley laughed. "It's not money we want, at least not from you. It's much simpler than that." He smiled like a benign schoolmaster, but it was an act. "It's your corporation," he said. "You must simply stop meddling in the whole matter of the ranger's death." Those were familiar orders, first from Branco, now from Brickley. How was anything going to get solved if the good guys and the bad guys were telling me the same thing? "What if I don't agree?" I asked. Mr. Leonard said, "When you hear his offer, you will. You're just one more in a long line of people who eventually said yes." "Sounds like an exclusive club," I said. "You could say that." Brickley and Mr. Leonard smiled familiarly at each other. Brickley said to me, "You see, You are inadvertently upsetting a plan that has taken years to design. I don't do anything inadvertently. Brickley's face twitched again before he went on. That plan will make every party involved extremely wealthy. I am willing to offer you a percentage share of the proceeds of our project. His voice had an impatient edge to it now. You will be rich and secure for the rest of your life. I can't imagine what else someone like you could want. Where's Jennifer Doughton? I demanded. Brickley looked annoyed. She has intelligently agreed to the same terms I'm now offering you. I thought she resigned. She left of her own will after finally listening to reason. That's a lie, screeched Wacky Jackie, still armed with Dutch courage. Shut up, yelled Brickley, and he turned the gun on him. In spite of the gun facing him, Wacky Jackie stepped toward Roy Brickley. Pay me. I'll shut up. Then Wacky Jackie turned to me and said, Don't believe him. I said to Brickley, Is this all related to your wife's land in Yosemite being surveyed for the condominiums? Brickley frowned. Oh dear. You know more than I thought. That spoils everything. That's too bad. He looked really sorry about something, and I had the feeling it was me. How did you find out about that? He asked. Grim determination, I said. Brickley looked unsure. I hadn't planned on this. Just then we all heard a sound from the lobby of the building. Brickley turned his head, but kept the gun pointed at me. Suddenly, from within the building's cavernous atrium, we heard someone calling. Raymond! Raymond, are you here? It was Vivian Brickley. Mr. Leonard said nervously to Roy Brickley, What is she doing here? I thought we were going to finish this business without her. Brickley nodded and answered quietly. Quiet! She may not have heard us. But I'm prepared, Leonard. If she comes up here, I'll take care of it. She'll listen to me. But Roy Brickley looked worried. Again, Vivian Brickley called, this time even louder. Raymond, I know you're there. I can see the lights in your office and your cars in the lot. Brickley frowned, then called back to her. I'm upstairs, Vivian, in my office. He muttered something angrily to himself, then turned back to me. It's really too bad you know about the land, Mr. Kraychik. It puts us back to where all the trouble started. You see, you know exactly what Roger Fairbrook knew when he first came to Boston to try to stop me. We could hear the hydraulic lift open at the end of the walkway. Vivian Brickley spoke loudly and urgently as she approached the office. Raymond, the police were just at the house, and I thought you'd want to know. She stopped short in the doorway to Brickley's office. She was flushed with excitement. She looked around at the group of us in there. What is going on here? And what is my hairdresser doing here? Mr. Leonard gawked at me. Your hairdresser? I nodded and noticed that Vivian Brickley's hair still looked damn good. But now she'd switched back to her other, more familiar state, the bewildered matron. I honestly couldn't tell whether she knew what was going on in that office or not. She said, Raymond, why are all these people here? You said you'd be finished with work hours ago. Brickley answered her. It's all under control, Vivian. You needn't have come. But why, Raymond? Is that a gun? Brickley said, Yes, Vivian, I've had to take this precaution now. Raymond, why are the police looking for you? That's enough now, Vivian. I'll explain later. What's more important is that your hairdresser seems to know about your land in Yosemite. You didn't tell him about the land, did you? I've heard that women often tell their hairdressers everything. Vivian Brickley's eyes burned through me. I suddenly sensed more power in her gaze than the doddering librarian she so expertly portrayed. Her eyes flashed repeatedly between me and her husband. Finally she spoke. No, Raymond, I've never discussed the land with him. Praise the gods, I thought. At least the confidence between hairdresser and client was still sacrosanct. Suddenly, Wacky Jackie blurted, You're going to give me my money or am I going to tell him everything? Keep quiet, Brickley ordered, aiming the gun at him again. But Wacky Jackie persisted. He's lying. He looked at me. He wanted me to kill the little Filipino. He pointed a shaking finger at Brickley. He wanted me to, but I didn't, even though I hate the little faggot. He's Balinese, I said. Brickley screamed, Shut your mouth. Fat girl's not dead either. The way he wanted. Got her dragged away too. Then Wacky Jacky spit on Brickley's calfskin shoes. Don't want to hear no more? Pay me now. Roy Brickley suddenly broke into raucous laughter that lasted uncomfortably long. Why should I pay anyone now? Who knows we're here at all but us? Mr. Leonard shuffled his feet nervously. Now, Roy, keep calm. I'm sure there's a solution that doesn't require any more violence. Mrs. Brickley stamped her foot on the carpeted floor, but it made only a dull thump. Raymond? What is he talking about? Are you committing nefarious deeds? Who are these two men? She indicated Wacky Jacky and Mr. Leonard. Brickley tried to speak calmly, but he was all nerves now. Vivian, I haven't told you about it yet. I wanted to surprise you, but now that we're here... Vivian, I've been working on a project that will make you proud of me. It has required the work of many people, most of whom you've never even met. Mr. Leonard seemed desperate to explain the necessity of his role. Madame, I've been safeguarding your holdings in the Yosemite Valley. Without me, this whole project would have failed. Jack said, Hey, I blew up them rocks. Without me, none of you'd be anywhere now. Mrs. Brickley said, What is he talking about, Raymond? Explain yourself. For an instant, Roy Brickley looked sheepish and weak, and I felt I was witnessing a marriage squabble. I did what I always do in those situations, observe quietly and await the best moment to act or speak. Brickley quickly recovered his bravado. Now that it's come out, Vivian, I will explain everything. Brickley took a step back as if to address us formally, though he still held the gun on us. What I have conceived is unmatched in the history of architecture. Even Ayn Rand's fountainhead pales beside my master plan. It will be the ultimate statement of man's control over nature, and it will make us rich, Vivian. Mrs. Brickley was now even more agitated. Rich? Raymond, money has never been a problem. Not for you, Vivian, with the founding fathers of Sacramento in your blood and your bank accounts and your properties. But for me, it's different. My family disowned me long ago. I've had to sustain my own income. I've had to work. Raymond, everyone has to work. You're prattling like a spoiled young boy. Not anymore, Vivian. Today, I'm a man. This project will prove it. Vivian Brickley looked at Roy Brickley as a mother would a naughty child who has finally graduated to delinquency. When she spoke again, her voice was controlled and focused, but as usual, she was a few facts behind the rest of the conversation. Raymond, I hope you're not planning something on the land. Of course I am, Vivian. The land is just sitting there doing nothing. It's been waiting for the perfect moment, my plan. That won't do, Raymond. I've told you my intentions is to preserve that land. It is to remain natural and unaltered in perpetuity. Vivian, that's too long. We are dying as we speak. I must make my mark on this world. Vivian shook her head. Raymond, this is distressing news. I saw my moment and spoke. What'll you see what happens now? I directed one superb hitch kick directly at Brickley's hand. The one holding the gun. The gun flew out of the office doorway and over the railing into the atrium. Just vectors and timing. Wacky Jacky immediately jumped on Brickley and knocked him to the floor. While they wrestled around, I lunged for Mr. Leonard, but my shoulder roared in pain, and our man-to-man scuffle resembled a limp-wristed tango. When we all heard the shot, Mr. Leonard shrieked, and everyone stopped moving. Vivian Brickley held a small silver gun in her stone, steady hand. Stop it, everyone. Stop at this instant. Roy Brickley was holding his shoulder. It was dark and wet with blood. He sobbed. I'm shot. You shot me. Vivian, I'll be scarred. I'll sue you. Raymond, stop whining. It's only a flesh wound. I'm sorry I had to do it, but you've worn me down. I'm tired of your insatiable greed, and I'm weary of your sexual problems. This dirty business is the last straw. I'm through with your boyish antics. I'm calling the police. From my clumsy embrace with Mr. Leonard, I said, May I call Mrs. Brickley? There's a peculiar cop I'd like to have witness all this. But she never had a chance to answer me. Responding to the gunshot, Lieutenant Branco and half the Boston Police Department were already coming in through the front door and running up the ramp to where we were. How did you know? I asked him. Your friend, Mrs. Albright, called me. Damn, I'd forgotten to phone Nicole. Branco said, looks like we showed up just in time, too. Saved me the call anyway, I retorted. Vivian Brickley said, Officer, arrest these men. Branco said, Ma'am, you'll all have to come downtown with us. Vivian looked at me with concern. Does this mean I'm under arrest, too? Just for questioning, answered Branco. Then looking at Mrs. Brickley's gun, he said, I hope you have a license for that weapon. Mrs. Brickley answered him shortly. Of course I do. I'm a markswoman. I've carried a firearm since my days in the Foreign Service, over 30 years ago. Then she remarked to me, But I've never been arrested before, she giggled quietly. Stick with me, Mrs. Brickley, I said. You'll see a lot you never did. A Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.